It's called Maximum Emergency Compensatory Action. That's in the war section of the textbook for victims of racism. It's the only recommendation that I have when it comes to anything dealing with bloodshed. Bloodshed must be covered because the white supremacists believe in massive bloodshed. And this is how they go about doing things. They believe in dominating people and killing people on a massive scale, on an ongoing basis. They glorify death. They are death worshipers. I mean, you can go in the average bookstore, and what is it all about? I mean, even when it's not about race directly, it's about what? The glorification of murder. And, all of the heroes and whatnot throughout history, and the history of the system of racism, either directly or indirectly, is about glorifying death. Not glorifying someone who's trying to save someone, but glorifying death itself. The killing of people and things. A few months ago, there was a gentleman, and I won't say he's a racist, or I won't say that he's anything except what he did, and that is he paid a huge sum of money just to shoot a lion that was already captured. And the question is raised, why would he do that? I mean, it has to do with death. See, you're just killing an animal. So, you have people who are going around saying, save the animals. In fact, some people objected to this gentleman killing a lion. So in the system of white supremacy, the white supremacists believe in killing not lions necessarily, but people. And they glorify all the instruments of death, like every type of gun, every type of sword that you can name. We're talking about the Oscars about now. Have you ever looked at the statue of the Oscar? The Oscar is an image of a person doing what? Carrying or holding in front of him or her a sword.
Wow. Okay. Now, Mr. Fuller, I didn't even know that one. I guess I haven't looked at it. Good. Thank you for that information. Thank you, caller, for your call. We really appreciate that. All righty, let's go to line number 2. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Hopefully you've got your copy of the book, and hopefully you'll make a donation to the program. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Yes, sir. Mr. Fuller, you made the comment that the white supremacists control all 9 areas of activity of people of color in America, probably all over the world. And when you made that comment, I was thinking to myself that the white supremacists, they have so much control over their prisoners, meaning the people of color on this planet, that they decided to play a little game with us a few years back. They said, you know what? We'll write the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment to make our prisoners think that they're free. And then when they go and celebrate these Juneteenth festivals and all that, we'll sit back and laugh and giggle, because we know that we have full control over them. And they got so much control over us, Mr. Fuller, is that here we sit in 2016 on the inner city plantations, totally dependent on the white supremacists for food, clothing, shelter, and jobs. And what is your comment to the last part of that comment about we're totally dependent upon them for food, clothing, shelter, and jobs, and that this freedom that they wrote, it 13th Amendment and all these other amendments, is nothing but a joke.
Okay.
They wrote the amendment. We didn't write the amendments. They wrote them. They didn't have to write anything.
Oh, okay, let's give Mr.
Just to show you how much control they have over us.
Let's give Mr. Fuller a chance to answer that. Okay, thank you. Mr. Fuller?
Well, here again, I want to keep emphasizing that the system of white supremacy is worldwide, 24/7, in all areas of activity. And what is it for? Domination and mistreatment of every person who is classified as not being white. So that's what it's about. Domination and mistreatment. Not just one thing like domination. That's just one part. The other part is mistreatment. of every person who is classified as not being a white person. That is what the system of white supremacy is. And what is it for? For fun, for glory, and for material comfort. Those three things. That is what it's primarily for in the modern days. And so this is what they do. And they make no apologies for it except when it's convenient for them to do so in order to further confuse their victims. And everything that they do is supposed to confuse their victims. And this is what you just mentioned a few seconds ago, that, yes, they come up with all kinds of things saying you've been emancipated. And like one gentleman said some years ago when he was asked, when were the slaves freed? He said they weren't. And that's correct. If you are a slave, if you are subject to mistreatment, let's get the word straight. What is slavery? Anytime, any person, regardless of whom that person may be, is subject to mistreatment. Anytime you're being mistreated, you are a slave at that very moment to whomever is mistreating you. At the moment that you are being mistreated, you are a slave to that person or those persons. From the moment you are not being mistreated, either directly or indirectly, you're not a slave. But slavery is nothing but mistreatment. They don't call it that, but that's basically all it is. Mistreatment. You're not being treated the way that you should be. You're not being treated justly. You're not being treated according to the compensatory definition for justice, which is what? Guaranteeing that a person is not mistreated, and also guaranteeing that a person is getting the help that he or she needs that is of the most constructive value. Now, slaves don't get the help that is of the most constructive value. Slaves are held back when it comes to what? All of the areas of activity and anything that's constructive. Let's go through the 9 areas again. Slaves are held back when it comes to economics, starting with the first one in alphabetical order, and then move to education, the second one. Slaves are held back. They're denied education. In entertainment, slaves are allowed to entertain themselves, but only in support of the system of white supremacy. This is why anything that's loaded up with some type of destructive activity, some type of what you might call silliness or foolishness, the white supremacists will support that in the field of entertainment. If it has any constructive message to it at all, anything that goes in the direction of taking black people away from just a plain old minstrel show, the white supremacists do not want that. They want to keep us in that mode.
Okay, we're going to have to break here, but we'll come right back to that. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Check us out on WCRS-FM 98.3 Wednesdays and Sunday evenings. Blogs and podcasts are available. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. Stay right there. Coming up next, we have some questions from the Gmail account and then more of Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. here on TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, and you can download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. Hello, my name is Mr. Bobby, and I am the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. He is the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, and that is a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, which is white supremacy. Now, you can get your copy of this book by going to producejustice.com, and what will come up on the screen is all the information you need to purchase this book, and also information on how you can purchase an additional word guide. And I strongly recommend that you get this book so you can understand what Mr. Fuller has written and talked about in your effects, that is, if you are a victim of white supremacy. And also, very quickly, in order for this show to continue in another format, which would be a 2-hour format, our goal is to cover 1 year's worth of programming and to happy. Now, Mr. Fuller and myself do not get any money from this. This is a separate thing to 766 or Mr. Fuller?
Oh, all black people are mentally ill, and all white people in the system of white supremacy are mentally ill. You don't have any people who are not mentally ill in a system that is a mentally ill system. The system of racism, when you have a world government based on mistreating people based on color, you have mentally ill people. So we're all mentally ill. Now, the white supremacists are the supreme people in this mentally ill system. They are the prison wardens running a prison full of mentally ill people, and the people who are running the prison are also mentally ill because they are mistreating, dominating and mistreating people based on color. That's a mentally ill proposition right from the beginning. So everybody is mentally ill. So, but who are to blame? Who are the people to blame for this situation? The white supremacists, of course. Every last one of them, because they're the ones who set it up, this mentally ill system. So therefore, if anybody is being mistreated in the system, because the system is designed to mistreat the people who have been made mentally ill from birth, then the people who are running the institution, the mentally ill institution, are to blame for this mentally ill situation that we have going all over the planet. This is why the system has to be completely eliminated, and a sane system replacing it called justice. Justice is better than racism as a world system. That's the theory anyway. Justice has never been tried seriously, but it needs to be tried seriously for the first time in the history of the known universe.
Okay. By the way, to the callers, I read all the questions. I do vet them, or I read them just as they are written. And there was somebody that made a statement to me about the questions, but I cannot change a person's question. I do not want to change a person's question. I don't want to add to it or take away. I just have to read it the way that it is. So if you write it that way, then I will read it with mistakes and all. I'm not a grammar corrector. I just wanted you to know that. I got a question from overseas. Brother Linguit, or Murtho, says, question to address Mr. Fuller. Can Mr. Fuller explain the meaning of, quote, being our own sustained unit, end of quote, and give some examples of what to do?
Being our own sustained unit?
That's what he has here, yes.
Yes. Okay, well, when I say unit, I mean a person. Each person tries to do what he or she can, because each person has eyes. I mean, most of us. Some people are blind for one reason or another, or they don't have arms or legs or whatnot. But even they can do what they can do to do what? Replace the system of racism with the system of justice. And you do that according to a code. You just set it up that this is going to be your pattern of things that you think about, things that you speak about, and things that you do. Mostly with the emphasis being on replacing the system of racism with the system of justice, and make that your purpose for being. We're all put here on this planet for a purpose, and the logical purpose is to solve problems. Why? Because we have problems. And what problems are we supposed to be solving? The ones that are right in front of you every day. Everybody that I'm talking to right now has some type of problem, even if the problem is just trying to make the next bus on time. I mean, you're trying to get to the bus station. People have to be places. They have to go places. They have to do things. These are problems. So you just solve the problems that you have to solve. But overall, you keep in mind while you're solving the little problems are a result of the big problem. And the biggest problem among the people of this planet that's holding everything up, as far as constructive activity is concerned, for both white people and non-white people, is a system that somebody inaugurated a long time ago called the system of white supremacy. So every individual person, that's what I mean by a unit, should be thinking in terms all day long of how they can replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice.
Okay. All righty. Let's see here. Let's go to this. TalkTeam@radio.com. We go where you go. Download the Talk Team at Radio.